Easter's full of traditions like egg hunts and chocolate bunnies, but have you ever wondered about the real significance of Jesus' death? Was it just another day, or did something world-changing happen? This isn't your typical Easter sermon. We're diving into the earth-shattering events that still impact us today. Buckle up, because Jesus' final breath wasn't just history. It was a cosmic game-changer. Let's get into how that moment could totally flip your life upside down. No Easter egg required. The curtain torn in two, God's presence made accessible. The moment Jesus died, the earth trembled and history was rewritten. But among the most profound events recorded in the Gospels was the moment when the curtain in the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. This curtain was more than just fabric. It was a barrier, separating the Holy of Holies, the place where God's presence was believed to reside, from the rest of the world. Only the high priest was allowed to enter this sacred space, and even then, only once a year. But when Jesus died, the curtain was torn. This act wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate statement from God. No longer would the people be separated from His presence. God's Spirit was now made accessible to everyone, no longer confined behind a veil. This monumental shift means that anyone, regardless of their background or status, can approach God directly. In that single moment, the barrier that separated humanity from God was forever removed. That's the beauty of Easter. The curtain is torn, and we are invited into God's presence like never before. The earthquake. Creation shakes in response to the divine. When Jesus died, something more than just human hearts shook. The earth itself trembled. In both the Old and New Testaments, earthquakes are associated with God's presence. From Moses on Mount Sinai to the resurrection of Jesus, earthquakes mark significant moments of divine intervention. In this case, the earthquake was not just a random geological event. It was symbolic. The earth shook because something transformative was happening, not just for humanity, but for the entire creation. The universe itself was responding to the death of its creator. This wasn't a localized tremor, it was the entire created order recognizing that the plan of salvation was in motion. And it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, God is in control and His will is being carried out. The saints who came back to life. A preview of the resurrection. After Jesus' death, many saints who had died were resurrected, their tombs opening and bodies coming to life. These resurrected saints appeared to many in Jerusalem, offering more than a strange spectacle. They symbolized the hope of resurrection through Jesus' death, pointing to the promise that all believers will be raised. Their appearance was a preview of the resurrection to come, just as Jesus was raised from the dead. This event reassured believers that death does not have the final say. Easter reminds us that, through Christ, death is not the end. Ezekiel's vision. The dead bones come to life. To fully understand the power of these events, it's helpful to look back at the Old Testament, specifically the prophet Ezekiel. In Ezekiel 37, God shows the prophet a vision of a valley filled with dry bones. These bones, representing Israel, were lifeless, hopeless, and forgotten. Yet, when God spoke, the bones came together, were covered with flesh, and became a living army. This vision wasn't just about Israel's physical restoration, it pointed forward to something even greater: the resurrection of all God's people. When Jesus died, the vision of Ezekiel was fulfilled. Just as the dry bones in the valley came to life, so too would all of creation experience resurrection through Jesus. The resurrection of saints after Jesus' death was a fulfillment of that vision, a sign that life would triumph over death, both physically and spiritually. The moment that changed everything, the law fulfilled. When Jesus died, an earthquake signaled the beginning of something new. This event marked the fulfillment of the law, not its abolition. In the Old Testament, an earthquake signified the giving of the law to Moses. Now, through Jesus' death, He perfectly obeyed the law, establishing a new covenant. This covenant isn't based on our ability to follow rules, but on Jesus' sacrifice. His death fulfilled every requirement of the law, allowing us to have a relationship with God through grace. Jesus' death was the fulfillment of God's redemption plan, offering a fresh start to all who believe. The righteous suffered for the unrighteous, a mystery of grace. Another profound aspect of Jesus' death is the concept of the righteous suffering for the unrighteous. Jesus, who was sinless, took on the weight of our sin. This is the mystery of grace, that someone so perfect, so righteous, would bear the punishment for those who are far from perfect. In doing so, Jesus bridged the gap between humanity and God. He became the ultimate sacrifice, offering his life so that we could live. This concept might seem strange or counterintuitive, but it's the very heart of the gospel. Jesus' death wasn't a random event. It was a calculated act of love, a plan designed from the foundation of the world to rescue humanity from the consequences of sin. The power of resurrection. Death is not the end. Easter is all about resurrection. It's about life triumphing over death. And it's not just about Jesus rising from the dead. It's about our resurrection too. The power of Jesus' resurrection is the guarantee that death will not have the final say. Just as Jesus rose from the grave, so too will we rise one day. This hope is central to the Christian faith. Resurrection isn't just some abstract spiritual concept. It's a real physical promise. When we look at the events surrounding Jesus' death, we are reminded that death is not the end. In fact, it's not even the final chapter. Resurrection is the final chapter both for Jesus and for us. God's plan unfolding. Why the cross matters more than ever. The cross of Jesus is more than just a symbol. It's the focal point of God's plan for humanity. From the moment sin entered the world, God had a plan to redeem humanity. That plan culminated in the death of Jesus. The cross was the means by which sin was defeated, and the power of death was broken. When we celebrate Easter, we're celebrating more than just the resurrection. We're celebrating the fulfillment of God's redemptive plan, a plan that stretches back thousands of years and reaches forward into eternity. The cross is the intersection of justice and mercy, where God's holiness meets his love. And because of the cross, we are invited into a new relationship with God, a relationship of grace, love, and hope. The new covenant, grace, not law. Before Jesus died, humanity was bound by the law, a set of rules that no one could perfectly follow. But with Jesus' death, a new covenant was established. This covenant isn't based on our performance, but on Jesus' perfect sacrifice. Under this new covenant, God no longer requires perfect obedience to the law to be in relationship with us. Instead, he offers grace, the unmerited favor that comes through Jesus. The death of Jesus marks the end of humanity's reliance on the law for salvation and the beginning of a new era where salvation is freely given through Jesus Christ. The new covenant isn't about earning salvation. It's about receiving it as a gift. Easter, the moment everything changed, forever. Easter is more than just a holiday. It's a celebration of the moment in history when everything changed. When Jesus died on the cross, the world was forever altered. The veil was torn, the earth shook, and the dead were raised. Jesus' death marked the beginning of a new era, one where death no longer has the final word, where resurrection is possible, and where the presence of God is available to everyone. As we reflect on Easter, let us not just remember an event that happened 2,000 years ago. Let us embrace the reality that Jesus' death has profound implications for our lives today. Through his death, we are given hope, grace, and the promise of resurrection. That's the power of Easter, the power of the cross. And there you have it, folks. From curtain rips to earthquakes, and even resurrection, zombies, Easter is far from boring. It's a cosmic event that still impacts us today. If you love diving into these mind-blowing truths, hit that like button like it's the veil being torn in two. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another resurrection-level revelation. And hey, share this with your friends, because who doesn't love a good earthquake, right?